gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Cyprian Kane Radio Podcast Show.
What did he look like? Tall, aristocratic, far away, look at his eyes. Aristocratic, far away, look at his eyes.
Bitch, is this in 3D? No, but your face is.
Hello, General Santos and the surrounding areas of the Philippines. Hi, welcome to the Cyprian Kane Radio Podcast.
From high atop the mountains we prevail, coming to you virtually live with the help of modern technology. In this, the age of the machine drone, we are flying at a sweet altitude for this purpose at this time. Under the radar, somewhere over the rainbow, off the grid, and yet right before your very eyes. Are you watching closely? So get a grip. Come on in for a trip down the radio dial past the perimeters. The in crowd.
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Sitting on the edge of your nose, waiting for a wall. My, how your garden it grows. Can I see them all? Pretty little pills, well, here come the lights. All the fanzines say that we're out of sight, baby. It's true. Walking on a desperate road, they'll never let me out. Never getting clean from the soap. It's too late now. Waiting for a fat man to say, I like the way that you play. I'm bad to say, where were you? 'Cause we've been great. In crowd now, we're with the in crowd. In crowd now, we're with the in crowd now. Standing on the edge of your face, waiting for a buzz. You always want to save it with grace. Well, here comes the fuss. If you put a daughter in it, then she'll tell you a tale of lovely little banner, but the mood is so pale. Lady, it's you. Ever stop to ask yourself this? What's it
Hello and welcome again to another podcast on CKRP, the Cyprian Kane Radio Podcast. I'm joined here with Dr. Martin Markovich. We are poolside at the Social Seminole today. We've decided to take things outside a little bit, so if you hear a little bit of the sounds of nature and other things that are going on, you'll understand that is the nature of it. We just heard the song, The In Crowd, and I wanted to mention right off the bat that Dr. Martin is working on a book on the Cold War.
Thank you.
Yes, and at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Doctor.
Well, thank you. We've done several podcasts. The last two are lead ups to this one. We did the superstars of the early '70s.
Yes.
With Elton John, Stevie Wonder, John Denver, Led Zeppelin, Carole King, and Paul McCartney.
Yes.
And then you did your list of the most striking artists of the late '70s for you personally, when you were actually just starting to listen to music at that point. And we covered Bob Dylan, the Ramones, the Clash,
Poet laureate of the generation, Bob Dylan.
yeah, and a few others. And now I'm taking the lead on this one. This is my list based on sales, not necessarily all my favorite groups, but these are the superstars of the late '70s who had the biggest sales, the biggest success, particularly with album sales.
Well, I'm very excited about this show, Martin, and I'm excited to see. I've got a chance to look over what you've got for us, but I can't wait to get into the meat of it.
Okay, well, we are going to start with Fleetwood Mac. In some ways, they are the most representative group of the late '70s, and although they were an unusual group at that time, in that they consisted of 3 men and 2 women, and what was even more unusual was the majority of songs were written by the 2 women.
Really?
Yep, Stevie Nicks and Christine McVie, and they were songwriters, and one of the guys, Lindsey Buckingham, was also a songwriter. But the group Fleetwood Mac actually had a long history before that album was recorded and released in 1977. The group was formed by the guitarist Peter Green, who some of our audience will remember him as the author of Black Magic Woman.
Oh, yes.
The Santana song.
Yes.
And Green was a very talented guitarist, and he started the group in the late 1960s, and he had some success, as we mentioned. However, he left the group and had a kind of a difficult life, but the group carried on without him. They struggled some in the 1970s, particularly in 1974. Their manager, Clifford Davis, hired a bunch of other musicians and tried to run the tour with the other musicians presenting as Fleetwood Mac rather than the actual members at that time.
I guess you could call that Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, it was definitely, when people learned about what he was doing and got on to him, it definitely was a big story at the time. And that was actually when I was, as a teenager, getting interested in rock and roll. And I remember everybody, even though they weren't a super group at that time, a lot of people heard of them, and they were a respected blues rock group. And the fact that their manager would just sort of kick them off and hire a bunch of other musicians was really shocking, although the manager had his side of the story too. We won't get into all that. But after that disaster with the fake Fleetwood Mac, everything turned around in 1975 when Stevie Nicks, the female vocalist, and her then boyfriend, Lindsey Buckingham, guitarist and vocalist, joined the band.
Now, do you mind if I call the other band what was I going to call it?
Flakewood Mock, yes. The brief but notable era of Flakewood Mock. So, but as soon as Lindsey and Stevie joined the band, the other 3 members were John McVie, Christine McVie. Those 2 were married to each other for a while, but that broke up. And the drummer, Mick Fleetwood.
Yes.
So they had a group of 5 people, 3 men, 2 women. They recorded their first album, which they just called Fleetwood Mac. And even though they were starting from a low point, the Fleetwood Mac album steadily built up steam. The record company released 5 singles from it, and it became the second most popular album of 1976.
Wow.
And we will talk about the most popular album,
Oh,
1976,
boy.
toward the end of the show.
Okay, great.
But so they then jumped on it, and they followed up with their Rumors album. Rumors,
Boom.
bang. Rumors spelt the British way, Rumours, and that was the most popular ever up to that time, selling 21 million copies. And then they followed up with a double album, which was called Tusk. That was in '79. Tusk was considered to be kind of a flop, but only relative to Rumors. It actually sold 4 million copies. And the title track from Tusk is still used for football halftime shows.
Oh, nice.
So for a failure, it was a pretty good album.
Yeah.
And the band continued on and off for many years. They released 5 more studio albums, and they toured intermittently. Unfortunately, Christine McVie, one of the songwriters, and she was also the keyboardist in the group, she died at the age of 79, so she had a pretty good full life in 2022. So now it's an open question whether the band will ever get back together. But as those 2 albums, the Fleetwood Mac album and especially Rumors, uh, set records for sales, they were the best known rock band in both the United States and Britain, and also one of the most gossiped about rock bands. And there you can hear some of it in the lyrics of the songs, but we're not going to get into all their
I was going to
romantic
say, Rumors
relationships.
itself kind of says it.
Yeah,
You know, the one thing I wanted to mention about them as well, if I
Yeah.
may, is that when you have 3 people with voices like Christy McVie and Stevie Nicks and then Lindsey Buckingham, I noticed all 3 of them have their own distinct sound. And that's rare to find one person in a band that can be the lead and do that. And yet they had 3.
Yeah, they were a
that
little
they
bit
could
like
go
the
to.
Beatles in that respect.
Yeah.
And although the Beatles had 4 with Ringo.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they certainly set records, were extremely popular, especially in that late '70s era, and we can all still enjoy their music.
Fantastically. And now, everybody, put on your dancing shoes because we have another group up for you.
The Bee Gees.
Wow, the Bee Gees.
Yeah, the Bee Gees stand as one of the most dominant and versatile groups in the history of rock and disco music. Um, Even in the 1960s, when they were still in their teens, they had 7 top 20 singles. Then they had their first #1 in 1971, which was "How Can You Mend a Broken Heart."
I love that song.
Yeah, great lyrical song. And they wound up with a total of 9 Billboard #1 hits, all from the 1970s. But even more impressive, I would say, they wrote and produced 7 #1 hits for other artists. That includes 3 for the band member's little brother, Andy Gibb. Some people may
Yes.
remember him. And 1 each for Barbara Streisand. They had another song, "Islands in the Stream," which was recorded by Dolly Parton and Kenny
They wrote
Rogers.
that?
They
That's
wrote,
one of my favorite songs of all time.
well, hey, they wrote it. I'm not sure which combination of them wrote it, but the Brothers, BG stands for Brothers Gibb, and some combination of the Brothers Gibb wrote "Islands in the Stream," a huge #1 hit, I think, in the '80s. Frankie
Yeah.
Valli had a #1 hit with their song "Grease," which was
Oh.
from yet another movie.
And now that movie, huge. I mean, without digressing, I just
Yeah.
want to say that song set off the whole film.
Yep. That song and several other big hits from Grease. But we're going to mostly talk about a different movie, specifically Saturday Night Fever. And part of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, there was Yvonne Elliman singing "If I Can't Have You."
I don't want nobody, baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
Huge song. I think that might have even been the first single. And also one that I will always remember, Samantha sang an "Emotion."
Yes,
And
Emotion is such a great song.
yeah, that is I think one of the most emotional songs that's ever been written. It had to settle for #3, But what a track record for the Bee Gees, both with recording their own stuff and writing stuff for other people.
Not even to mention yet their harmonies,
Their harmonies, yes.
which really made the songs come to life in a whole nother way. Gave them a very distinct sound.
Right. And they were three brothers. The three brothers were Barry, Robin, and Maurice. I think only Barry is still living. They were born in England, actually, raised in Australia, started their recording career in Australia, and they wound up living in the USA most of their lives. And a little bit like the Beach Boys, the fact that they sang together and harmonized together from early childhood gave them a capacity to harmonize and create that distinctive Bee Gees sound that everybody remembers.
Oh, yes.
Their early hits in the late 1960s featured a soft, orchestrated sound with the piercing harmonies, and their soft sound was sometimes combined with cutting lyrics, as in the song "I Started a Joke," which was a hit for them in
That
1968.
song always hit me right in the heart.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's got that hauntingly melodic, bring you in and suck you in sort of feel to it.
Along with very depressing lyrics.
Yes.
Well,
What kind of joke was that?
well, we have to give credit to Robert Stigwood,
Oh,
Sir Robert Stigwood. He was the Bee Gees manager during their peak years from 1967 to 1980, so he played a big role in their success. And he was also the manager of Eric Clapton. He owned his own record label, RSO Records, for Robert Stigwood Organization, and Stigwood produced numerous movies, including Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which we'll get to a little later.
yes, that train wreck.
However, so the Bee Gees did break up for a little while in the late 60s, but when they got back together again, and they had another hit in 71, Lonely Days, which was influenced by the sound of the Beatles and John Lennon. So they were doing okay, but some years in the 70s, they were not superstars. They were just a successful band, but not at the top of the charts. But what made them so enormous in the mid to late 1970s was their adoption of disco, which probably most people who were their fans and were familiar with their music before then probably didn't think they were real likely to become a disco group. But what they did is, when they were recording one of their albums, they were living in Miami at the time, and they had to cross the bridge between Miami and Miami Beach to get to the recording session. Well, this was apparently a particularly dilapidated bridge, and as their car drove across the bridge, everything was creaking and cranking and made a very irritating sound to them as musicians. But then they started imitating the sound on their recording, sounded like disco, and they had another big hit, namely Jive Talking.
Jive Talking. Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah,
Telling no lies.
That was the beginning of their disco era. So they knew a good thing when they had it.
Wonderful instrumentation in that song too.
Yeah. Right.
Oh,
Right. And that again was another one of their great strengths, the string arrangements.
Yes.
Either strings or synthesized strings, as the synthesizers were dominant in a lot of the 70s. Their string arrangements combined with their vocals, then combined with that disco beat, which they didn't expect to be their trademark themselves. That really was the formula. And we want to give the three backup musicians, Blue Weaver, Alan Kendall, and Dennis Byron, the keyboard player, the guitar player, and the drummer. They were not always credited for writing the songs, but they played a critical role in the writing, arrangement, and production of those songs. So we have to give them a shout out. And they did get a writing credit on some of the songs, so they're not starving.
Good.
Then, when they were hired to do the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever, that's the movie that did it.
That's the album that changed my life too.
Changed your life.
Yes.
Certainly made a big impression on 90% of us back in those days. And it is a movie about a disco dancer played by John Travolta.
Yeah.
And if we have some listeners who don't know who John Travolta is, you're either really young or you missed it when when he was a huge star in
Yes.
TV and
Or you're
and
listening
movies.
to the wrong show. It's down the road and to the left.
Okay, but anyway, so the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever, also a double album. It had 16 songs performed both by the Bee Gees and the other acts, some of which we already mentioned.
Yes.
And 6 of the songs were written by the group. 3 of them became #1 hits. Uh, the movie and the album were released in late 1977. The album at that point was the best-selling album released up to that point. Then it actually overtook Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, and it remains the second best-selling soundtrack of all time, with over 40 million copies sold. So Saturday Night Fever, and I would imagine they're still listening to it in the Philippines.
They still are.
Yeah.
I heard some of those songs when I was over there, and I wanted to say that when I was younger, there were 3 albums that we really wore out.
Uh-huh.
Now, one of them's more austere. It's called The Pirate Movie with Christy McNichol, because I'm a big Christy McNichol fan. Okay, the soundtrack for that was brilliant.
I haven't seen that or heard that. I
that
wanna
one
check
right
it
there.
out.
It's a really funny movie,
Uh-huh.
but the soundtrack is great, and it has several really good memorable songs on there. And also the Saturday Night Fever and the Grease soundtrack.
Greece, yeah.
Now, we used to skip school, my brother and I, just to play dress up and try
Yeah.
to act out and sing the songs.
Uh-huh.
So
How
you can
how
imagine.
about The Bodyguard?
The Bodyguard movie?
Yeah, with Whitney Houston, Kevin
Yes,
Costner.
yes, fantastic movie.
Yes, that is actually the #1 soundtrack, best-selling
Is it
soundtrack of
really?
all time. Yes, yes.
And I'm sure that Whitney's version of Dolly Parton's song has
I
a
Will
big,
Always Love You.
yes, has a big factor in that.
Yeah, and I did see that movie. But the #1 hits, back on topic, the #1 hits from Saturday Night Fever were How Deep Is Your Love, Stayin' Alive,
Yes.
which we will always remember, Night Fever, and also Yvonne Elliman's If I Can't Have You. 4 #1 hits from that one album.
Staying
So-
Alive also pops up in the movie Night at the Roxbury, which is a interesting film too, about disco kind of guys trying to go out and have the party scene.
All right. Well, that was the peak for the Bee Gees. They released more albums. They had more success, but that was it. And it's fair to say, with their chart success over a 15-year period, they are one of the 10 most successful rock acts of all time.
Yeah.
In the culture of the late 1970s, not everyone loved disco, but everyone knew that at least most people did.
Yes.
So that's it.
I remember they gave us a hard time they gave Rod Stewart a hard time and the Stones a hard time. They were giving bands a hard time when they would do a disco song.
Well, then there's that whole argument. But,
Yeah.
But we won't get caught up on
But
that.
I still love the songs they did in the genre.
Yeah. The Bee Gees knew what they were doing. So now we go on to a somewhat different musical style.
Yeah, we're going to switch it up here, and we're going to go into the country rock area.
Yep, with the
music,
Eagles.
with a very dominant band.
Yeah, the Eagles. Country rock has been popular for a long time, at least back to the Byrds in the 1960s. And the Eagles were the dominant country rock band of the late 70s. Their greatest hits, Volume 1, is still one of the biggest albums of all time, certified for 38 million sold in the USA
38
alone.
million. That blows your mind.
Yeah, just in one country. Everybody was listening to the Eagles. The Eagles, during their initial run, they produced 6 studio albums from 1972 to 1979. Hotel California from 1976 is the most popular and most critically acclaimed. During their original period, there was some turnover in membership. The 2 constant members during the 70s were Don Henley, who was the drummer as well as a vocalist, a little bit unusual combination, and Glenn Frey, who was the guitarist and vocalist. Joe Walsh, who is famous for recording Life's Been Good to Me.
Yes.
As what he was a member of the Eagles starting in 1975, and he still plays with them. So those are 3 of their more.
And what a unique voice for Joe Walsh too.
Yes.
Rocky Mountain Way, all the songs he did, just wow.
Right. And what a funny song.
Yes.
The band The Eagles was originally formed by John Boylan in 1971 to serve as Linda Ronstadt's backing band.
Really?
Yep. However, after they had one tour with Linda, they decided to go out on their own, and they signed with either Elektra or Xylem Records. And but there's no hard feelings. Both acts, both the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt, emerged as leading superstars of the decade of the 1970s. And Linda is still close friends with Don Henley, and she's a big fan of the Eagles. So
Ah,
it turned out great in every
yeah,
way.
that's a beautiful thing when you see so many train wrecks in the rock business.
Yeah.
To hear one that comes together like that is just really nice to hear.
Yeah, and I can say, Linda Ronstadt. We won't go into a lot of the controversy, but Linda Ronstadt was excluded from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for many years, and the powers that be finally gave in. I think it was maybe about 10 years ago, even though she was such a big star in the 70s. They finally gave in and got her in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just 10 years ago. But Don Henley was one of the people who stuck up for her and said it was a travesty that she was not in the Rock and Roll
I think
Hall of
so.
Fame. And she got in. The Eagles appeared frequently on TV and when they were starting out in 1973, 1974, including something called The California Jam,
Oh,
which was a TV show. It was almost like a televised Woodstock. It had 9 major bands. I'll just mention one: Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And if you've never heard of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you might want to look them up. Kind of a heavy metal band, but one of the huge bands back then, which has been somewhat forgotten. Also, another notable TV show, the Eagles' reunion concert, which was called Hell Freezes Over, memorable title, and that was
yes.
in 1994. Henley and Fry, whom we've mentioned, did most of the songwriting. Other members may also contributed songs, including Randy Meisner, who wrote One of These Nights.
Oh, that's a big hit.
And also on some of their biggest hits, Henley and Fry brought in 2 other star songwriters, Jackson Browne and J.D. Souther.
There's that name, Jackson Browne.
And maybe we'll get to a chance to include him in another show.
Yes.
Some of the biggest hits of the group were Lion Eyes, Hotel California, the song, Peaceful Easy Feeling, Life in the Fast Lane, and One of These Nights. And again, that relatively short list shows that they could do slow lyrical songs, they could do a little bit of disco, they could do hard rock, they could do a variety of speeds and styles while basically staying within that country rock genre.
Yes, and I also want to add, they could do it live
Mm-hmm.
and sound perfect.
Yep. They were all originally hired because they were top-notch musicians. John Boylan, Linda Ronstadt's manager, didn't even know they could sing. But what a band. And one thing about them, even today, is the Eagles are largely played on soft rock stations that don't back announce the numbers. So some of the Eagles' biggest fans are not even aware of the name of the group, much less the name of the band members.
But they know the songs.
They're still listening to the songs and loving the songs.
Well, fantastic. Now we have a big name coming up.
Yep.
Somebody that they called, this is when they start talking about Prodigy.
Yep.
And he was one for certain.
Yep. Peter Frampton, the guitarist, songwriter, and singer, originally from London, Great Britain. And for 1 year, 1976, he was 76, 77. I think the album was released late 76. He was the biggest rock star thanks to his double live album, Frampton Comes Alive.
Oh, yes.
And he also had great success with his follow-up album, I'm In You. The title track was a #2 hit, and he also scored in the top 20 with his cover of Stevie Wonder's Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
Wow.
So with his long curly hair, overall good looks, and easygoing manner, he was a heartthrob for millions of girls and women. I looked him up on AI, artificial intelligence, and they told me he had a softer, more accessible rock star image than some of his peers, and I think that's probably true.
That's the way I remember him.
Yes.
Just like that. That's perfectly said.
And he was also the star of the movie version of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band,
Yes.
with the Bee Gees as his co-stars, and a lot of other bands, including Aerosmith and Earth, Wind and Fire.
And as you know, I grew up wearing that album out.
You love that album. That you had that album before you had any of the original Beatles
Before
albums.
I even knew the Beatles wrote it.
Yep.
I had that album. It was being thrown out down the street. I picked it up. I took it home, and it blew me away. And I was like, "Who wrote these songs?"
Yep.
And it was still a few years away before I would find out who wrote them, and then get to the bottom of the actual album, Sgt. Pepper's, done by the Beatles themselves, which is a whole nother story.
Right. And of the movie soundtrack of Sgt. Pepper, I've actually never seen the movie, but I can testify that the soundtrack has some very interesting versions of Beatles songs.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it did lose money. It cost a lot to produce, and some fans, and this was my generation primarily, some fans were offended by the time that Frampton and the three Bee Gees were a worthy substitute for the original Beatles, because the original Beatles at that time to us were just too holy.
They were untouchable
For anybody else to.
And I was going to say, too, the movie plays like
them.
a long rock video. It's loose storyline, and it's mainly a lot. You put the ingredients together, and you'd think you'd have a hit. I mean, you have Steve Martin, you have George Burns, you have so many other people that were in the Aerosmith and everybody else. But when it all came together, it just kind of fell flat.
The whole was not equal to the sum of the parts.
That's true.
All right. So anyway, even though Frampton's popularity declined in the 1980s, he continues to write and record to this day, and he showed where his heart really lies when he released an instrumental album called Frampton Forgets the Words. And that reflects that his first love and his greatest artistic love is really the guitar. Despite all his superstardom, his good voice, his good songwriting skills, what he loves more than anything else is to play the guitar.
Yes, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention what he used to do with that little tube hooked up to his microphone and make the guitar talk.
Yes.
Good times, wah, 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 wah.
Right.
You know, he did all that crazy stuff, and it was really groundbreaking at the moment.
That effects box was a big part of the reason that Frampton Comes Alive was the biggest album of its time, and the importance of technology in making music.
Yes.
So that's it for me.
Well, that's a very impressive number, and you know, we've come right to about to our time here. And now, Martin, is there anything else that we can say about upcoming shows? I know we've been bantering. We've been talking about doing a political show.
Yes. Well, I am thinking about it, since we will share our thoughts with our audience, and I don't mind saying I've been interested in politics all my life, and my book is it's primarily a historical book, but it's certainly related to the politics of today. But I have to admit, I am a little bit afraid that once I get started talking about politics, I'll never be able to stop, and we won't be able to cover these great artists.
I'm sensing a spin-off show in the works.
All right.
Well, it's been another great show, and I want to say I really appreciate you, Martin, for everything that you put into this show. This was a fantastic list of just mega stars.
Thank you, Cyprian.
And folks, dear friends with gentle hearts, we will see you back here for our next show, where we may be talking about politics. We may be talking about more music. We have some great ideas for films coming up, where we're going to be talking about suspense films and other kinds of things. And we have a very unique take on how we're going to approach that. We've been talking about that as well. So stay tuned to the new shows, and God bless.
And now our time has come to an end, my dear friends with gentle hearts. Soon the night will eclipse our thoughts of this day, and tomorrow will begin anew. Hold on, my dear friends. Hold on to your wits in this darkened world. Hold on to your faith of what can be and will be in God's time. Hold on to your seats until this ride has come to a complete stop. Hold on to the dreams that find you and put the sparkles in your eyes. If the journey of 1,000 miles must begin, then it shall begin with this single step. So the journey is already begun. I have miles to go before I rest. Good night and God bless. You've been listening to the Cyprian Kane Radio Podcast, a Bucks 3 Ring production.